Have you watched Arcane? Because you should have. Okay, in all seriousness though, you actually should have watched Arcane. It is a good show. And it is worth watching. There will probably not be maybe spoilers. I don't know yet. I've kind of scripted it. I don't want to spoil it too much. But at the same time, I also want to talk about the show because it's a good show. So if you haven't watched it, you should. But if you want to hear a review on it beforehand, then hell yeah. When I initially watched it, I did rate it like 10 out of 10. But that was kind of just hype and shock that it was actually a good show. I think in all, it's around probably an 8 or 9 out of 10. It's not perfect. And once you actually, take a step back, it is a pretty basic story structure. It doesn't go the way you think, and there are definitely good twists and turns in it. I need to stop spinning on my chair. I keep spinning on my chair. But it is a good show nonetheless. The few issues are it can feel kind of rushed at points, and there are some plot points that are possibly not looked at enough, but at the same time, the plot points they do look at are looked at very well. And it doesn't tell a story with an agenda or with a haha, look at this. All the characters are very nuanced. It's not looking at one character and going, this character is perfection. See Mario? That is human perfection. I forget how cameras work, so I can't point my finger. You're just gonna have to deal with it. See? That way. Keanu, he's perfection as well. Well, I mean, he is perfection, so that's not really a valid argument. But Mario, it's not saying Mario is perfection and then showing him doing these dastardly things and going, he's still perfection, or having an act like a shithead and being like, he's still perfection. It's like, see, these characters, they have issues. And guess who else has issues? You. Actually human characters. Plus, it looks beautiful. The art is gorgeous. It is just animated. Like, when people say every frame is a piece of art, that's meant to be taken, not literally, but kind of like, some frames do look very good, other frames do not look very good. It's not that some frames don't look very good, it's more like, there are those few frames in an episode or a show where it is kind of whatever, a few scenes where it is, yeah, I mean, it's still good looking, but it's not, but every scene in Arcane is, fucking gorgeous. But the writing is really well done. I think that's the most important part, is that it is written very well. Like, a lot of shows will just have, like, they'll have the interconnected story, but what I find with modern TV now, that it's moved to streaming services and such, is that it is a double-edged sword, streaming services, in my opinion. Because you find now, modern shows, they don't have to have that 13-episode runtime, or that 26-episode runtime that you used to have on normal TV, because they have to fill up those slots originally on the TV. Unless it was like a special time of the year, or they get special permission, or they have like 2 seasons or something, whatever. But now, like, it used to be basically 13 episodes for a 40-minute TV show, and then 26 for a 20-minute episode. Fucking hell. I know my times. Yeah. So, that worked. But what that would lead to was there would be some episodes of the TV show where they're like, okay, we have to budget this out with the money we have across 26 episodes. We're going to put a lot of budget onto this one episode, and that means these few episodes aren't going to have much budget. They're not going to have much going on. In terms of overall story, they're not going to be anything connected to the main story. They're just going to be filler. But you get a chance to look at the characters and learn about the characters a bit more. And so while it's not connected to the overarching story, it still plays a bit of a role in how the characters are perceived by the audience, and they give you a deeper look. Now, bad shows will have inconsistent characterization throughout a whole series, and when it comes to those episodes, they won't teach you shit, they're just there for the fun of it. And it's not saying those shows are inherently bad. I mean, they kind of are. But it's more just that, it's not as interesting, not as long-standing. A lot of the best children's TV shows I found, they had those overarching stories, they had the fluff in the middle, but they had consistent characters, and they had good arcs, and they had a good story overall, even if it wasn't that deep of a story. But what's happening nowadays, with streaming, TV shows can have as many episodes as they want, or as few as they want. Which means that generally they cut out the fluff. They cut out those episodes that are just filler, that don't pertain to the plot at all. And that is a double-edged sword for the sheer fact that you lose time with these characters now. So instead of having those 10 episodes maybe more, maybe less, per season, where you actually get to know these characters and see their interactions with other characters and how they react in certain circumstances, that's now completely gone. Well, not completely, but it's a lot less common than it used to be. Now you're just left with characters kind of interacting as they would, but pushing the story forward each time. Well, that's fine if it's written well, but it can also feel rushed when that happens. And it feels like you're just jumping from plot point to plot point to plot point without giving the characters time to breathe, time to react, time to do anything. Because, you know, as a human, it takes time to get over things, to deal with things. And obviously, you don't have to say, okay, after this fight scene, or during this fight scene, they deal with everything. It's more like it takes those few days. And obviously, TV isn't the greatest representative. Even in good shows, they can still gloss over it and speed through it a little bit to make it a bit unrealistic, but show the realism of the situation in a faster way. But that tends not to happen. It's just, oh, someone that they know about and care about just died. They're fine with it 5 minutes later, it doesn't matter. And that's what you see a lot with TV shows, especially modern ones, is that the writers go, they want to have this dramatic moment for a character. And so they kill someone off, or they do something to do with that, and then 5 minutes later, it's all done with. Arcane handles this differently, in a sense. Like, they don't really have... Well, they do have a dramatic death. Spoilers, I told you there would be spoilers. At the end of basically, episodes 1, 2, and 3 are set in the past, and then episode 4 to 9 are all in about 7 years future or something. I don't think it actually says how far in the future it is. It's about 7 years, 10 years-ish, give or take. I don't know exactly. But basically, a character does die in episode 3. A few do. And you don't see the exact responses of the characters that would affect. You don't see it at the time. You don't watch them grow. You don't watch the growth of those characters over time. But you see what happened to them in that 7-year time jump. You see where they've gone to now. And while it's one of those things of, you look at that time jump and it's like, oh, they're just doing it to not show, it actually moves the story forward and it allows more things to progress, and you don't have to watch those boring bits kind of thing. And they're not boring bits all the time. I'm kind of contradicting myself a lot here, just ignore that. But it's like, you don't have to watch them have those reactions, because it treats the audience cleverly. It's like, okay, you guys are smart, you guys have seen what's happened, and now these characters are here. You can put together what happened in between. That's not pertinent to the story, what happened in between. What matters is they went from point A to point B. And point A to point B, well, technically this should be point A to point B, because, you know, it's on this side, but, you know, point A to point B, it makes logical sense for those characters to go that way. And then as they interact more, you see, yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think that's what's most important, is that all these characters feel like they've made the right choice. Well, not the right choices, you know, like, you'd be in the studio and be like, I'd rather see them make this choice. No. But it's more like, you see it, and you go, okay, this is a better choice, this is a worse choice. But then those choices they make have payoffs. It's not like they make the choice and it does nothing. It actually has consequences to them, to the people around them, to stuff that happens. Like, so much of the show is built off, this character has done this, and like, it starts with someone going to the Undercity, buying some shit, and going back up. So you don't see that, because they tell you that happened. They don't actually show it. And it's like, oh, but they should show you, show not tell. But the thing is, you don't... Show not tell is one of those things of, you should show important things, but it's fine to tell certain things, because there are some parts that just don't matter. Like, showing someone going to buy some shit, it doesn't really make that big of a difference. Whereas you can tell it and show it along, and show someone telling someone else alongside different things, and you learn a bit about the character through that. And it's like, there are so many payoffs, like, to do, and callbacks and things. It's like that part where he goes, where you learn of him buying stuff. One of the characters who says, oh yeah, some higher up came and bought stuff off us. He didn't even haggle. You know, like, it's a bit of a throwaway line. Like, it kind of means nothing. But then you get to later on in the series, and the same thing is said about that character again. And you don't notice it the first time, you don't really notice it the second time, but you see it pointed out on a subreddit, and you go, huh, that's true. And then you watch it again, and you go, huh, that is true. It's like, it just shows how much care and attention was put into snaking and waving these lines together to actually make it coherent. and have these things dead. And the thing I mean when it's said, again, later on in the show about the same character, it's said by a completely different character in a completely different circumstance to how it was originally stated, but it's still the same thing. He didn't haggle. And it's like these characters are trying to do right by each other and do right by their memories and do right by whatever's going on. But they're failing monumentally at it, kind of thing. And there's just so many payoffs, so many things, and it sets up the main villain really well. Like, you go through episodes 1 to 3, and it's a show based on League of Legends. And you expect, oh yeah, it'll be a basic show. It'll be just a fun romp with it, some of these characters, you know, like, it was one of those shows where you expect it to be, you know, maybe a 5 or 6, maybe a 7. You know, you don't anticipate it being an 8 or 9, and not just an 8 or 9, but a very high quality 8 or 9. Like, it's not perfect. Like, there are definite flaws, but those flaws are just so minimal that it doesn't really detract from the overall viewing experience. And the thing is, it's hard to view it again. Like, you watch it once, you watch it twice, you watch it 3 times. It's all really good, but as you watch it more, it slowly just... the highest highs slowly start to dip down a bit, because you've witnessed them, you know what's coming. The greatest part of the show is when you don't know what's coming, because then it's just, it blows your mind, because it's not a direction you expect it to go. And so episode 1 and 2, while they're really good episodes, they are setup episodes for episode 3, and that's fine. Like, you can't have a good payoff without a good setup. It doesn't matter how good you are. You can't have a good payoff without a good setup, not a good setup. It doesn't matter how good that payoff is. If it has a shit setup, people go, damn, that was a really good ending, but it had nothing leading up to it. What was this? It's like Chekhov's gun. It's like, if you set up a gun, you use it later on in the story. But it's like, if you have all these things pay off, but you haven't set them up very well, it feels a bit cheap, a bit kind of like, okay, whatever. But when it is set up properly, and it makes sense for these decisions to be made, it's like, oh. And so, in episode 3, the whole status quo shifts of the show. Like, it goes from being this fun, kind of like children having fun, and it turns into the tragedy that it is. And it gives you a brief taste of it. And episode 1 to 3 is basically a 2-hour movie masterclass. I think it kind of weakens between 4 and 9, but in the sense of it weakens by maybe 0.1 or 0.01 of a score point. Not by enough to properly say it's bad. You know, like, it's still really well done between 4 and 9. But the tragedy of 1 to 3 is absolutely brutal. I'm hoping they don't undo that in season 2, although I'm thinking they will. But the thing is, it's a very thin line for season 2. If they undo the tragedy of episode 1 to 3, then if they do it just right, if they get it perfectly correct, it will enhance it. But if they fuck it up and it's literally like an inch either side is going to fuck it up, it's gonna undercut all of that and kind of just butcher the whole meaning of that part. Which is a shame, but, you know, it's a show that I have faith in now, because, and their writers I have faith in, because of the success of season 1, because it was a show that I went into thinking, this will be cool. I don't expect anything, you know, too special, but I think it'll be neat. But it won't be anything too special. But then it was just really special, really well done, and it should be watched, even by people who don't play League. Like, I've seen lots of people who don't play League, don't know shit about League, and they're like, yeah, no, Arcane was really good. And there aren't many shows that you can say that about, where if you don't know the source material, you say, oh yeah, that was a... I mean, it's not so much shows without source material, because a lot of shows don't have source material and they're still really good. It's more video game adaptations, where it's like, they generally try and cater towards the players of that game. And that's fine. But then it isolates the larger audience who doesn't play that game. Because if you think about it, there are going to be more people who don't play your game than people who do. And it doesn't matter how many people you have playing your game, even if it is up in the 100 million, if you want to access the other 7.9 billion, you've got to make it accessible to them, you know? And if you don't make it accessible to that 7.9 billion, you're potentially missing out on another 200 million viewers. Even if those 100 million watch it and love it, which has happened in cases before, there's still a lot that are just going to go, meh. But because they made it accessible, it allows it to branch out from just the player base into others. It's a shame it wasn't quite picked up by central media, quite like Squid Game. Like, it felt like it was really close. It was almost like it was stuck in plastic wrap sort of thing. Like, imagine this plastic wrap here. This is Squid Game. It, like, burst through it and went up and blew out through all mass media, popular media, whatever. And that's good. Congratulations, Squid Game. I'm not ratting on Squid Game. It was a really good show as well. I'll talk about it in some other video, maybe, if I feel like it. But Arcane, because it's based on a game franchise, and because it is hidden behind pop culture a little bit, being based on League of Legends, having a lot of things against it, what happened is that it went like this. And imagine this is a plastic sheet. It went whoop, like that. And it pushed the plastic, but didn't actually break it. Whereas Squid Game pushed through and then broke the plastic. And what I mean by that is Arcane definitely had an impact on a large part of pop culture, and it definitely was, a lot of people were like looking across the plastic and they saw Arcane pop up, you know, pushing against the plastic, and they watched it. But then above the plastic layer, above where it was pushed to, there are other people who still haven't heard of it, haven't watched it, because it's based on a video game, it's animated. They expect a kids show without much heart, or maybe not without much heart, but they expect a kids show, mainly. And it's not a kids show at all. It is a very adult show. And I'm happy to see it as an adult show. And another adult show is Legend of Vox Machina, which was another animated show that came out a few months later based on something completely different, but by all means. And it was a really good one too, and it's good. I'm happy to see adult animation going in that direction. I'm talking about all sorts of things. Just deal with it, you fucks. But all in all, Arcane was a really good show. It's very much worth a watch if you haven't seen it, whether you know League of Legends, whether you don't. And it would be good for you to share that with other people who don't necessarily know it. Because it is a show that deserves to be watched by a lot of people. It won't be for everyone. And, you know, don't get mad at people if they don't enjoy it. If they don't enjoy the art style, that's fine. Honestly, the art style for me was a bit grating at times. I'm not gonna lie. Don't get me wrong, it's gorgeous. I can respect its beauty. I am an intellectual. I can see that it is beautiful, and even if I don't appreciate it every single second, I can still see that it is absolutely gorgeous and a very well-made show with lots of love and heart put into it, and money. But it didn't always do it for me. Not every time. But I think I'd prefer this style over live action, although I think they're going to start doing live action at some point. I think they've hired some live action producers and stuff, which should be interesting. Kind of curious as to how that goes. I mean, if they do succeed, like, Riot Games is just going to take over the fucking world at this point. It's not even a joke. But I digress. As much as the art style was really good, it didn't always work for me, but I was still happy to watch it again and again, because for the most part, like 99% of the show is gorgeous and 100% and like really, really good. There's about 1% of it that for me it just doesn't quite work properly. And it's not even Uncanny Valley, because these characters are made to look human and have human expressions, but they're given such large characteristics that it's not quite human either, you know? Like, it's kind of a mix. But overall, it is really good. Art style's really good. Everything's really good. Just watch the fucking show. Like, honestly, just watch it. It's not that hard to watch. I mean, it's 2 hours per act, 3 acts, 6 hours of watching. And it's like, oh, that's so much, but you just watch 6 hour-long episodes and you're done. Because each episode's like 40 minutes long, basically. 40 to 50. So it's about 6 and a bit hours, maybe 7 hours max. 7.5. I don't know exactly, but, you know, give it a watch, give it a look. It's really good. I'd recommend it. Enjoy Arcane, because you should have watched it by now.